So I'm here with Andrew Williams, a founder of Aptrix AI and the chair of the board of ScotlandIS.
Hi.
When we look at the ecosystem, what would you say are the pain points that Scotland is having? Start off.
Um,
Yeah,
well, I suppose I don't want to start by enumerating them because actually there's a lot of good stuff going on as well, and it's important to keep these things in context.
yeah,
We
exactly.
are incredibly lucky to have government support to help things get started. There's a tremendous ecosystem that's been built up over the last couple of decades, and none of that is to be sniffed at all. The I think having said that, the challenge that we're mostly facing in the day to day is that there's so much happening very loudly about the support that's available to get companies started that it's very easy to miss that actually what is available isn't necessarily solving the complex problems. There's education and lots of bodies to get companies off the ground. But ask an entrepreneur who's done this a couple of times, that is not the hard part. Getting your product to 0 to 1, get the fit, experiment with customers, and get to the point where you have leveraged traction. That is exceptionally difficult, and that requires resources and time and support, and those things aren't typically being covered by the support that's available. And yet we are in a place where if you listen to the media, if you go out on LinkedIn, you'll see lots of people saying that Scotland is the best place to start a business, the fastest growing ecosystem in the world. And I mean, if you're anybody on the ground, this is sort of factually inaccurate, never mind misleading. And all of that, assumed positivity, I think is getting in the way of talking about the things that we could be doing better, like bringing people together, offering advice for the critical stages, or even financing at that early high risk time, which our
Hmm.
capital just does not align with at the moment.
No. And so when you talked about it's factually inaccurate, can you just elaborate on just for context for?
Um, well, I am not a holder of data, but
Mm.
I spend a fair amount of time analyzing the ecosystems of different countries around the world, and there's a couple that have been released. If you search LinkedIn and comparing growth of ecosystems, the US is clearly out front, and it is being chased very quickly by those companies that are perhaps jumping on AI or jumping on high risk capital and
Mm.
risk adoption early on. And the UK is trailing behind them and behind mainland Europe as well. So, how we can claim to be the fastest growing when pretty much anybody else looking at this area is showing that they're growing faster, I don't know. I feel like it's goodwill that is backing our momentum rather than facts or evidence.
No, I
And
understand
so
that. Yeah.
yeah,
You
it'd
know,
be interesting to see a real comparison based on the numbers because I just don't think they stack up.
I would agree. I've spoken to plenty of people out with, and there's similar remarks I've made, and they're kind of shocked, is the polite way of putting it, of when they look at it and they ask you the questions, they're going, "All right, I saw the picture that it's kind of presented from out with."
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I reckon that is the main problem because until you show what the challenges are or agree what problems need to be solved, it's pretty much impossible to do anything about them.
Exactly.
And yeah, that I think is what we need to deal with.
And when it comes to the support ecosystem, like from the government and other sort of angles regarding it. What is it, do you think, the priority of trying to get scale ups is the right thing, but the issue is the way it's kind of been implemented is the real issue. It's not the ideas behind it, it's just it's been kind of bureaucratically complicated and as a result, it's gone to the wrong places.
Oh, wow, there's quite a lot to unpack in there. I don't know if there's any one thing that I could put my finger on that is wrong.
Yeah.
Um, but in the journey towards scale ups, there's been a tremendous amount of money and effort put into the very earliest of stages.
Mhm.
And we're now maybe 4 years into the government program to make this happen. And we're just hearing people talking about let's start to look at scale up because startups totally sorted now. So we're fairly well into a journey that's a very long one, but there's discussion now about scale up being the next thing that needs to be solved because it's super important, but it's not the joined up thinking. It's like, okay,
Mm.
startup is now sorted, let's go scale up. And you've got people who have been involved in the startup support package
Yeah.
who are looking at it going, well, yeah, I mean, you did some stuff for us, that's great, but we're not really much further on than we were before.
Mm.
The irony being that because we had a good ecosystem before, there was a fantastic amount of peer support and people giving back. A lot of the learning, the mentorship, and the community was there before, and it's only recently, perhaps, that it waned through COVID or other challenges. You know, it's hard to say exactly what did it.
Mm.
Um, and I think that what's been overlooked is how much effort needs to be put into revitalizing an ecosystem to be able to get it back to where it was recently. You can't just let these things sit and hope for the best.
Yeah.
But I mean, I understand that the metrics for what is working well recently have been sort of, you know, how many businesses have you got started? And that isn't really the step immediately before now, how do we help businesses scale? There's a big journey between getting a company off the ground and actually having a product or a service business that is ready to think about scaling.
Yeah, no, it's an incredible journey when you actually think about it from the start to the end, and most people don't really understand it. And then there's kind of the concerns regarding the education, all the research year on, year out is always saying, there's not much about education. Education could start earlier, like you look at other countries, the European ones, example, and Estonia is probably one that most people refer to because of what it's done, considering its population. It's incredible what it's done, you think about it. But anyway,
Yeah.
they've created an education system that kind of encourages entrepreneurial sort of thinking, and we've talked about it, but we still haven't actually implemented anything. And do you think, it's that same old, politicians, it comes to elections, especially the one coming up, they say the things that we want to hear. When it comes to the actual reality, they kind of backtrack on it because business isn't like that interesting sort of thing. It gets the vote, but then it's forgets about what they're wanting to do. Or do you think it's more there's other issues going on?
I mean, that it certainly could be a part of it. Folk, obviously, in a place where they need to get voted in to make change, have to say the right things to be able to be put in a position where change is possible. Yeah, perhaps once they're there and able to do it, it's no longer the top priority. There are, let's face it, millions of people that need to be satisfied by any policy change. And so
Yeah.
it's not just a case of, here's what we were elected on, so here's the change we're going to make. It probably needs to be more considered once you're in post. So I'm sure there's a lot of challenges there. But you're absolutely right. At the early stages, we're kind of not getting it right. And uh, part of the ScotlandIS idea in this area is to spark
Mm.
enthusiasm
Yeah.
with as early as possible. Sorry, um, and if we can get entrepreneurial ideas into classrooms or to excite people about the opportunity early on, that would be a big difference. Unfortunately, I think we can both agree, right? Technology is a big enabler of this, particularly with the
Yeah.
okay, I'll just say AI, but you know, all of this latest technology is making a lot of these things easier for smaller people to do something substantial. And yet we have an education system that is basically pushing computer science and low-level engineering principles like out as non-standard in the curriculum. And now folk are depending on extracurricular activities and groups put together by parents and friends and family to make this possible. So how we're going to support a growing ecosystem if we're not doing anything to start people early is a big challenge. You're right.
Yeah. And when it comes to in Scotland, is what are they suggest? What are you suggesting is the ways to kind of help, kind of reinvigorate the ecosystem and kind of, I guess, get the community to back to being a peer-to-peer education or what it was compared to the fragmentation that we have now.
Well, one of the core things for our organization as a member organization is to bring people together and represent what matters for them. So we do a
Mhm.
bit of lobbying to Parliament. We're trying to pull together documents that can be pored over by people who want to think about these problems and bring everybody onto the same page. But of course, there's a lot of words, a lot of slow progress there. what we're trying to do in the community itself is to bring like-minded people together, to bring potential partnerships for early stage businesses to be selling into larger businesses. The team has the Digital Critical Friends program that's taking members of our community into schools to do that invigorating of younger people to show them what's possible. We're also working on a project called the Founders Hub, which is bringing early stage companies together so that they can work collaboratively, support each other, or just, kind of chat through the challenges they're having in a space where it's not a teaching environment, it's not a business competition environment. You're literally just sitting and talking about the challenges you're having and seeing what we can do to support each other. And I think that kind of approach is critical. And when there
Mm.
wasn't sponsored programs of support, education, whatever, the ecosystem worked as a peer support group. And more of that, I think, being brought back would help to remember that we're actually all in this to win together, not just to support a couple of massive companies to go out and show what Scotland can do.
Yeah, it sounds like the support we implemented has accidentally, unintentionally kind of created this sort of fragment because they're trying to help, but accidentally what they've done is, from the sounds of it, is they've kind of led to more support towards bigger organizations. So they help the funding, the cash flow in, so it goes to the smaller. It's intended to go to smaller organizations, from the sounds of it, but that hasn't really happened.
I mean, there's a mismatch. What's being done versus what was intended, I couldn't really say because I'm not in on these conversations.
Hmm.
Um, there has been a lot of money spent and funding has not gone directly to helping businesses test early stage, high risk
Yeah.
hypotheses to get something off the ground and then take it to an institutional investor to get it to the next level. So we're seeing a lot of companies get stuck between I'm started and uh, I see traction, but I've not got anything substantial. How do I prove it? How do I grow it? How do I take this to somebody who can, yeah, lift it up to that scale momentum? There's a big gap there at the moment.
Yeah. And when you look at the funding problems, just from your point of view, not from like well your understanding, your knowledge and your experience, what would you say are the issues based on your work with the abstracts and Scotland is?
So I can really only speak from my experience in terms of early stage business.
That's fine.
That what I think we're seeing is that the risk appetite in the funding that we have available doesn't match what you need if you're really trying to do something new, different, or
Mhm.
outside the conventional thinking, which in my head is what startups are, really trying to do. That's kind of like the bread and butter. So we have a bit of a mismatch there. Scotland's finance is established in long-standing businesses, family enterprises, estate management, and finance in the bigger sense. And these are not groups that are well set up to take lots of high-risk gambles in the understanding that a few of them will pay off, and that works in the long run for everybody. And although I don't want to adopt a huge amount from the valley, we are different places and we should be. That seems to be the one difference with how things play out
Yeah.
with regards to finances. Is in the valley, they're like, oh my goodness, that could be amazing. Here, have some money. Tell us how you get on. Probably some check-ins to do sanity checking, support packages, whatever. But there is a lot more that might be possible. Give it a shot. And here even at the pre-seed stage, when you're not normally expected to have customer revenue, they want to see sales projections, the whole customer pipeline for the next 3 years or something like that. Um, and these businesses are often just trying to go, well, look, we think this is the future, but it's going to take us a while to build out the experiments, to work with people to show that we've got something. And you need to do that quickly. And the money that we have is not high risk and it is not quick moving.
No. And do you think that kind of goes to the conversation that we had, the idea, like in angel investing, it's kind of led to these buyers because of as I said, it was kind of like the policy, the changes to kind of make it safer has actually led to more bureaucracy, and as a result, it's kind of hampered it. So there's less money. It's taking longer for investments to actually go through than usual.
Possibly, possibly. The angels that I've worked with, I've been very lucky.
Mm.
They're keen, they move quickly, and they know that it matters. And these are ex-founders, you know, they
Yeah.
get it. They see how these um, deals have to move. Now, that's I think the exception. I've heard experience from other founders who've been very frustrated that angel investors have been more behaving more like seed investors, but with small numbers. And they want to see all of the deal flow. They want to see the business plans. They want to understand in and out the risk profile and the um, sales pipeline. So that can happen. Now, whether this has been impacted by changes through um, policy or economics, it's hard to say. The
Mm.
one thing that I think we are seeing is that changes that Scotland has implemented in taxation and the way that um, high net worth individuals are
Mm.
being
Squeezed.
bracketed, squeezed, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the big squeezed.
um,
It's the
there's
vector.
just not the right. There's not the appetite there. The incentives are
Mm.
not being highlighted, I suppose. And you see that in angel investing, but also we're seeing it in employment as well with the tax brackets there too. We're finding that folk who are looking, what do I do next? I'm looking for a change. They're not going to pick Scotland as the place to do that because they're not incentivized. They could go south of the border and get a much better deal. And so we kind of got a bit of a mismatch here where people are talking about the opportunity, but it's not actually
Mm.
aligned with what's truly being pushed or incentivized.
No, it makes perfect sense. No, I understand. And that's kind of what I'm hearing from founders and entrepreneurs when I talk to them and behind the scenes is that there's this mismatch. It's not the support they need. And when there is support, it's not enough or it doesn't kind of, it's not in the right places. Is some of the concerns it's saying. So when it comes to, because there's this sort of conversation, do you think, what do you think needs to kind of be put into place to kind of get Scotland to back to where it was, this revitalized ecosystem? What do you think, or what would you suggest us to kind of, especially with the, upcoming Hollywood election kind of coming up, what do politicians need
Uh,
to do to help kind of
I
incentivize? Is an easier way, maybe.
yes. I mean, there's a whole load of little things that could potentially make a difference, but of course, you need a big bang to get people's attention. And I don't know what the singular biggest thing that could be done is. Um, Reversing out policies that have made it less well aligned for early stage risk would be a good thing. Taking back changes in taxation, returning to the at least equilibrium with south
Mhm.
of the border. But if we could think of a program that better highlighted the benefits of supporting early stage risk in business, that would be amazing. I think that supporting community endeavors like has to be absolutely top of the list. Bringing people together so that they can, I don't know, bounce ideas around, potentially collaborate, but support or even challenge each other because the folk on the ground are going to be better at this than any instigated program,
Mm.
in my opinion. And where we had been in the past, uh, maybe 10 years ago, for example, the ecosystem was supported by smaller projects, but founders were, depending on the program they went through, given a small stipend, put into a shared office space with other people in a similar mindset. And the expectation is not that the businesses that go in succeed, but that the founders that go in grow and develop something exciting and come out the other side with a better developed business, potentially through partnerships or other types of, um, coming together. And I think more smaller. packages of support could be really interesting. Instead of putting all of the eggs into one massive finance and outsourcing it to a single organization and hoping 5 years later they've really turned things around, 6 monthly projects with smaller amounts of cash that's literally just enough to get folk to hustle, figure out how to do something and show an outcome in that time period would be a very interesting, scrappy approach. And I think that would align better with how early stage business needs to think to succeed.
Hmm.
Because if we have another government program administered at a high level and left to run as a contract, the people doing it aren't aligned with the people that they're trying to support. And
Yeah.
it's practically impossible to revitalize an ecosystem if you're not part of that ecosystem.
Hmm.
Um,
So it
or
kind of,
if you're not a consumer.
no, I totally get that. And that's kind of one of the challenges is how do you get, I guess, it's always the kind of the complaint that I always hear when it comes to after election. It's they're listening to us, and then it's the election comes up, they're listening. Then afterwards, it's oh, they never listen to business. You know, these are decisions we made and nothing's happening. The conversation isn't the question isn't about the politicians. The question is what needs to kind of happen to kind of get that collaboration back to where it was, do you think? Because there used to be a collaboration, you know, when there was business was listened to, you know, okay, we need to do something that doesn't actually destroy the economy, and we're not just raising tax because that's the only, you know, system we have. We're not being collaborative, we're not being out of the box sort of thinking we used to do, you know. There's probably other ways to incentivize the economy that encourages the whole ecosystem, and it raises questions, the whole budget in one way, because you have Kate Forbes' approach, which is investing with the economic program, which is 10 years, and it's about how to grow, get the startups and scale ups, because that was where the how you'd incentivize the economy. And then that hasn't really happened. It's just been you have the chief entrepreneur and then another chief entrepreneur, and now things are happening there, but it's taking like a lot of bureaucracy to kind of eventually get there. What needs to kind of change from your point to kind of stop all this complication? So it's a streamlined approach.
I think a reality check on this and the way that
Okay.
we can get on the same page together better is by listening, stopping, pausing, taking stock
Mm,
of where things are at and actually making change based on what is heard from the wider ecosystem and the community rather than the supplier delivering against a government program. Because when you're reporting to a customer how the job has gone, you're always going to say it's absolutely phenomenal because you want the next job.
mm,
But as a nation, as a business ecosystem, we need to be honest about where things are. And I can understand where the peculiar tax changes have come from. The government has been struggling in the same way that individuals
mm,
and businesses have all been struggling through the last few years. But to say that this is now the best place to be and we're fantastic at it is just, I mean, it's naivety um, or worse. When if we were truly honest about where things are, we could be making changes at every level to slowly move it forward. And when the economy is struggling, the businesses are struggling. If you can get through this period, like any other recession or downturn, if you can get through it and come out the other side, you're likely to be incredibly successful.
mm,
But we are in place still where businesses are struggling to stay alive, particularly early on when they don't have the customer revenue or other ability to just take longer than normal to get through this stage of life. Uh, and so we've got, in a way, finance is set up because the economy is in a certain state, but it's not understanding that everybody across the board is likely to be finding those same challenges.
mm.
Um, and actually, we're seeing this in private equity as well. The investment firms are putting, well, again, I'm not the holder of numbers, but I understand to be between 60 and 70% of checks is literally follow-on checks from a previous round because portfolios want to keep their businesses alive because they know once you get to the end of a downturn, it's going to be good times for everybody. And that means that private equity also is not in a place to be supporting the early stage higher risk stuff. So we're almost in a place where there's not um, the ability to start new or to support this because we're all in a place where that's not going to make sense.
Mm.
Um, so looking at that, when I speak to early stage founders or people tackling complex problems, there seems to be a general understanding that rather than government um, support in packages, trips, well wishing, whatever it is, they would succeed more if there was just literally a 25K check awarding businesses for attempting to do something risky because they can materially do something with that and deliver on an idea or a challenge, and that could be taken to the next stage. But instead, we're kind of growing more and more, sorry, we're starting more and more businesses that are now competing for a shrinking amount of money in the investment sense, in the customer sense, or in fact, like we're all trying to sell to the same people, and there's only a certain number of buyers for whatever the early stage companies are going to be looking to sell. So we're kind of making pinch points further up the road which are between here at the earliest stage and the scale. So to jump then to scale, we're going to now start supporting that. It's like, actually, I don't think that's going to improve because we're not helping the flow of business through early stage challenges because there's not a reality check on where the problems really are.
No, I get that. And it's kind of like that concern that some people have said is that, there's some companies that are unfortunately zombie companies, I guess I think the term is that they're not growing, they're not scaling, they just survive on grants and they rely on grants.
Yeah,
And some have suggested, I don't know, what you think of this is basically it's still unfortunate. It's let those businesses die because they've reached that end point, and the fact that they rely on the grant suggests that the business isn't sustainable anyway, and that's where
quite
one
possibly.
problem will be fixed.
Yeah, there is a lot of criticism of the grant funding ecosystem, not because it's a bad idea per se, but because there are literally professional grant obtainers, applicants, businesses that hop between them. And actually, I was looking at a pitch deck a couple of months ago, and one of the businesses had like on their achievements the list of grants that they'd got, and if you kind of add up all of the numbers, that was an impressive amount but they weren't at a stage that you'd expect them to be if an equivalent amount of money had been obtained through
Hmm.
institutional funding or equity raises, because it takes so much time to
Hmm.
go and chase grant money when you'd be better speaking to customers or maybe reaching further afield for the cash to support your growth and your ambition of product development. So that is a challenging one. It's amazing that grants do exist, but they are designed to support certain areas of growth of the economy. And so businesses are going to contort themselves into fitting into those boxes to achieve the grant fund that's going to take them to the next level. And they can get distracted from what they were originally trying to do. And I mean, let's face it, if the government is saying this is an area that matters to us going forward, that's probably not really out there, change the world, we don't know what's coming next type of investment. So
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily align with startups. It's, yeah, established businesses might make good use of it. They are largely R&D projects as well, which are kind of set up for larger organizations to take on risky projects, which is fine. But then again, the bigger businesses are well supported to survive in a troubling time already. So do they need the support? Do they need to be doing R&D or can they deliver on business as usual? I don't know. But I think that there's not it's not the joined up thinking, this is a great scheme, we'll keep doing more of it and startups can apply. Doesn't mean the same thing as here's a high risk, high um, throughput channel for small checks for people trying to prove something new.
Yeah, it's interesting because of and it doesn't really help that you're now needing professional grant writers just to help to get the grant. So if you are a startup and it is a grant that you can apply for, you'd probably have a better success if you hire someone. So you probably end up losing a big significant sum of that money just to cover the grant writer because it's so complicated because of that. Do you think, for when there are starts of like sort of grants that actually could help them, it needs to be more simplified?
I mean, cutting through the red tape would be tremendous, but at the same time, it it sort of depends on what the grant is, because if it
Mhm.
is a big complicated grant for a massive project that a large business is best to deliver, then perhaps that process works for them.
Mm.
There's a person in the company who is tasked with finding these. Um, if we're saying, oh no, it needs to be easier to attain, small companies should be able to get it really simply. It's more than just the process that would need to absolutely be fitting for the early stage business. There's also um, what type of project, what's the scale of project, what's the timeline? Because even if it was simple, if it took 3 months to consider and you can't do a thing until it's been approved, I mean, that's a fairly substantial delay in a fast-moving early stage business. Uh, also, um, sorry, a thought just fell out of my head. It was on the way to my tongue. Um, oh, sorry, yes. Um, the repayment terms as well. So a grant is an amazing thing, and when people hear it, they assume here's a check, go do something amazing.
Mm.
But if you're working with Scottish Enterprise and other bodies that are set up with public money, that's not how it works, because they don't have the risk appetite, or the risk profile to go, we believe in this, here's a check, go do something amazing. They are set up to help businesses spend money that they don't have to shell out. So in the long run, it is a grant. But in the short term, you actually need cash flow or revenue, or an injection of capital over and above the amount of the grant that you have received to be able to deliver on the project to claim back the money from the government.
Mm.
So if, yeah, you can need as much as 100% or 120% of a grant, depending on its matching, its cash flow, the duration, and therein you're claiming uh, 3 monthly in arrears. So you got to cover the 3 months of the project, plus however long it takes for the checks to be paid, plus however long it took to spin up. And that's a huge amount of money up front to cover being awarded some money. And so the grant funding is maybe not actually well set up for the scrappy early stage folk, at least the way that it is.
Mm.
And so it's not just the application process. I think the whole thing could be better aligned for these interesting early stage projects to be made easier.
It's an interesting point regarding the grant funding. When it comes to the, I guess, Scottish enterprise role and Scottish National Investment Bank, do you think they could be better aligned or have better, more aligned principles, or because the policy has obviously changed over the years that their role has changed? Do you think because it's changed, it's kind of accidentally had a bad impact on the businesses it used to be supporting so well?
Possibly, yeah. I think when a group like this changes its focus, it probably should do more to review how it works rather than just taking a process that works and targeting a new type of business.
Mm.
Um, it, I think it comes back to what money is good at supporting. In Scotland, it has been the larger businesses to grow. It's been
Mm.
established places to take on something new, and these organisations are great for that. We have business competitions also that are set up to support the type of business that Scotland typically generates and supports from a geographical point of view, from the tourism, whatever it might be.
Mm.
And when you take existing programs and you say, oh my goodness, SaaS is the new thing, as actually people have done recently, or AI is coming, we want to do AI, or whether it's the wider technology startups, we want to get into this. If you just take your organization and try and adapt it to those, it's going to be challenging. And I think one of the mistakes that I see people making when they've not lived the startup journey at all, which let's face it, is most people, I understand that. Startups are not smaller, earlier businesses where all of the numbers are lower and they just need help growing the numbers. They are pre any sensible shape of business. They exist in a peculiar world where nothing they do makes sense and they have to figure out how to join the dots, how to prove something, how to make ends meet, so that they can come out the other side not as a scale up, not as a unicorn, but as a viable business. Like here, we have done something amazing, and hopefully you grow a user base, a target audience, or an entire movement before you get to that point. So when you do put your foot on the run the business, start scaling it up
Mm,
throttle, you're coming from a rolling start, not from the starting grid.
mm,
Sorry, I'm behind like I've got Formula One at the back of my head. I've not watched the latest race, but so if you imagine, yeah, we're part way through a couple of laps, and you put your foot down, you're going to fly as opposed to start a standing start where a traditional business might be when it opens premises or has a product to take to market. And the thing that people miss is that startups are not like that. They're playing a completely different game, and
mm,
it's not business as usual. And so taking an organization from supporting established business to trying to make the early stage stuff work, it is a challenge, shall we say, and unlikely to succeed or to come together well. And that I think is where angel investing can make all the difference, particularly with exited founders, because they get it, they understand it, they see the signals that they think they should see that indicate potential, and
mm,
they can back that. But the vicious circle here is that without large companies exiting, we can't keep revitalizing the pool of angel investors, and we start drawing again and again on the same individuals who have been doing this for quite a long time, quite possibly want to get back to doing their own startup
mm.
or working directly with a specific business. And I think the biggest impact that we see through not having massive unicorn or huge trade sales in, let's face it, about 10 years, there haven't really been all that many. The downstream effect of that is that there's not that early stage capital from previous founders that understand how this works. And that I think truly is the gap. And a government's not going to fill it, really. They need to incentivize bringing those people into the country, short of having them be here, um, exiting a previous business. And you got to fill the gap one way or another. You don't just uh, yeah, put more business support packages in place and hope that they can fill the gap that way.
Yeah, no, so I get that. And so, what would you, how do you think, the gap needs filled, so you can incentivize these people? What's the best way, do you think?
Uh, Incentivizing people to come in, goodness. Well, I probably would look to. I mean, you said Estonia before. There's a lot of good things there, not least the education system, but also whether it's taxation or the shape of the country's incentivization is interesting. Also, Ireland has done amazing things over the past decade or so. If you go to any one of those capital cities, you can feel that there has been a massive injection of energy, risk capital, that kind of thing. The types of companies that come from a scrappy start are evident and growing fast.
Mm.
Um, I can't say that I've been there and seen it, so I don't know the specifics that they would deliver on to recommend. But taking that idea from around the world and seeing what works rather than taking what we have and adapting it. Um, whatever, yeah, whatever we can do to bring people in and help them take risk, I think is the bottom line. And we're not, as a whole,
Yeah.
a particularly big on risk country, and potentially a little bit, we still have the British mindset of a career, establishing yourself, climbing a ladder. A lot of what we do well takes time.
Yeah.
And people are fantastic at it. There's a whole economy out there that's amazing, and I don't wish to knock it at all, but it's a real shift in thinking. Um, and the one thing that I think we can do better than anywhere else is the community. We're a really tight-knit country that wants to support each other, and the more we can double down on that, the better. The I've seen a couple of programs bringing people up from London or over from the Valley, and we've had people come up and go, "Oh my goodness, Scotland's amazing! I love to be here." And separate to the the geography, perhaps, if you like, um, the outside, what people list is the community, the supportive nature of people working here, with
Mm,
wanting to support everybody in the knowledge that we all grow and succeed together. Doubling down on that, I think, would be really important. And maybe the government thinks it's doing it, maybe it doesn't. I couldn't honestly tell you. But
mm,
from conversations with founders, the community is nothing like what it has been in the past. Um, and somehow it's got worse, not better, with the recent efforts to revitalize the ecosystem. So I sort of put it out there as a challenge because I don't know what the solution is, but I kind of get what's missing.
yeah, no, I get that. So, if you were to summarize your concerns, what would you, how would you summarize them, and what would you say needs to be the main focus?
I struggle to summarize all of these things concisely. Um, re I think realistically, the to succeed or to support
Mm,
an economy to succeed in early stage business, the startup particularly, sorry, not wishing to conflate the two, but if we're looking at high tech startup as a place that's going to drive the future of our economy, I think we've got to find a way to get bureaucracy out of the way, to support people coming together and working the way that makes sense for them when they're doing the startup approach, the risk
mm,
analysis, trying to explore these non-traditional avenues, um, and find a way to support interesting ideas rather than established businesses, looking at opportunity rather than the cash flow or the sales projection. Because if you look at the biggest innovations over the past 10, 20 years or so, particularly around technology, the huge things come from areas you would never have expected. No smart person thinks that they can predict the future of our technology um, economy, future ecosystem, whatever. Like
mm,
if you think, oh, I'm going to back that idea, it's the best one, it's going to win, you're almost certainly on the wrong page. And so if we take our traditional business methodologies, measurement, government support, it's not going to get the outcomes that we want. Step back, support the crazy things, the communities, um, and let it be a little bit more, yeah, directed by the people who are who are out there, who are doing stuff, who are
mm.
trying to solve complicated problems and want to do so with more people around them.
Yes, just like the creation of the television when it first came about, everyone thought he was mad.
Right, absolutely. If you look at so many of these things, it was completely nuts. There was no market, the technology barely worked. Um, and I mean, whether or not you are the one that is going to deliver, I believe that the television that we claim was pioneered here in Scotland isn't actually the version that came to be. There were two competing technologies, and due to um, disasters and Crystal Palace burning down and all that kind of thing, they had to pick one, and they went with the a competing technology. But these things happen. You've got to be in the game
Mm.
to have a chance of winning it. And the idea that we've got to figure out how we're going to win the game before we start playing, it's just not. It's not the way that this is going to succeed.
No, going back to Formula One metaphors, you just have to race it and see and get into the best position you can, and then
Get
maintain it.
into the best position, yeah, and push as hard as you possibly can every single time. If I wish I could accredit this to somebody, but let's just assume a big name in the valley. If you're not failing, if you're never failing, you are not taking enough risks. And here we have such a bad relationship with failure. If your business tanks for whatever reason, it's like, oh shoot, you're going to go get like a real job or something.
Mm.
But if you have somebody out in California, it's like, oh man, I can't believe it. Yeah, my business absolutely fell apart for, this reason. Now, brilliant. That's fantastic news. What a great data point. So how are you going to fix it for next time?
Yeah, that's a big leap in thinking, and that's the sort of thinking that needs to come back to what we used to have. I'm sure we used to be like that. You never had the TV without it.
I So I think that in general, it's a
Mm,
country that has fantastic inventors, innovators, but that we don't, in the wider sense, have that as an inbuilt understanding about how you make amazing things happen.
mm,
So it's possibly more due to coincidence than any curated approach that that has been the case. And I do think that we're at risk of losing that because somehow it's we're almost pulling strings in the wrong direction, making it harder for the inventors of the future to be based here, and that would be terrible, particularly in the world of AI, when we've got some of the best researchers in the world have stuck 60 years into a lot of this now emerging technology. It's going mainstream, and we're basically nowhere to be found on the forefront of this technology, which is kind of hard to think about. Uh,
yeah,
so yeah,
it's quite tragic actually. When you think about that, actually, 60 years and we're not even at
yeah,
the forefront.
to be leading an industry through all of the thought process and then to lose it in execution is a bitter pill.
Yeah. Do you know how that happened?
I think that we would probably need another hour and possibly a couple of pints to get to the bottom of that one.
Fair enough. All
Let,
right.
let's let's just say if we look at this at a help businesses to or sorry help entrepreneurs to take risks to support the idea that we don't know where the future is and we want to try a few things that we think are a good chance. We could put ourselves back in the right vicinity of we could we could put ourselves back in a place where we may just stumble upon the next big thing. I think is probably about as far as I could go because who knows?
No, totally. I think it's a good place to end it. Thank you for taking time to talk to me.